And I'm happy to be the host and try to extract the greatest insights from my colleague, Peter. As you know from SaaS, I mentioned that great company earlier, founded by Dr. Goodnight in Cary, North Carolina. Zebra Technologies, Bill is joining us. And then I mentioned earlier, my friend Rob from CBT. Let's go around real quickly and you guys explain yourselves, please. Peter, you go first. Who are you and what are you up to?
Thanks, Dr. Tom. So Pete Pugh-Jones, I work at SaaS, as you've mentioned already. I am lucky enough to be in a position to lead a team of diverse expertise consultants in the IoT space around EMEA and Asia Pac. And my background is quite varied myself. I originate from oil and gas, did some work in the insurance space, and predominantly spent a great deal of time in the cap market space in high-speed trading systems a long time ago, which leads me into the world of IoT and high-speed analytics, streaming analytics solutions and things like that we work on today.
I've been to your headquarters and seen the amazing software that has been very nicely, in my opinion, applied at first years and years ago to the internet as it emerged, and then now the IoT, the things part. So it's great to see that. Bill from Zebra.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Tom, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Bill Enzio with Zebra Technologies. At Zebra, I oversee our global retail technology strategy. So I'm spending a lot of my time with our retail customers, understanding the challenges that they're facing and the problems they're trying to solve, and looking at where we have solutions in our current portfolio and where we could be developing those solutions or bringing them to bear through investments and acquisitions. And prior to joining Zebra, which was just about 7 months ago now, at the beginning of this calendar year in January, I was with Walgreens for 15 years, leading a variety of the corporate asset protection functions, such as technology and analytics, focused primarily on the improvement of profitability through loss reduction and identifying where we were leaking profitability, frankly, which is just an unfortunate reality of a retail operation. So thanks again for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Oh, this is very, very cool that you only 7 months ago were an end user like Andy, who had joined us. So we're really excited about your perspectives from that domain, and not only an end user, but one in an amazingly big and complex retail organization. Great. Let me ask
my credibility while I still have it, Tom.
Yeah, you better. You're going to forget things. So let's, Kevin, I hope you're recording this so we can memorialize Bill's remarks. Rob, please, my old friend.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Tom, and what a wonderful pleasure it is to be with you and Peter and Bill in the community this morning. So thank you for that opportunity and the wonderful introduction. So Rob Schaeffer, President and CEO of CBT. I find myself in a great position to lead a dynamic team of really smart people. Our tagline is that we deliver technology with a human touch. It's really our people are the services and the value that we deliver. And we're fortunate to have started this journey in IoT some 4.5, 5 years ago now. So steeped in experience and knowledge, and really looking forward to sharing our experience with the community today.
Yeah, I think I speak for the audience. We're really anxious to hear these particular deployments. That's the theme. If you were to look at the abstract, Rob and Bill and Peter, the theme of this particular discussion is like I kicked off and Andy discussed earlier, real world things that are deployed and that are happening, or perhaps about to. In other words, you've got the investment, you have the business case, and you're about to as well. As far as CBT goes, Rob, I know something about your company because a customer of mine, one of their engineers went to work for you, and we did a great Refinery of the Future development with them, as you know. And then one of my colleagues from National Instruments, which I discussed earlier, you have great engineering expertise, I know personally, in that organization. The leadership, I don't know. But you have great.
As long as we have the delivery people, right? That's where the rubber
meets. They make up for it, right? No. Speaking of leadership, I do know Kelly, your founder and CEO, and she and I have met many times. Yeah, super leader. And okay, why don't we get into this? Would it be okay, Bill, if I called on you first?
Sure.
And if you could describe to us a real world IoT deployment, I believe in the retail industry, and talk about its ROI and its challenges. and characterize it for us.
Sure. And in fact, Dr. Tom, what I can do is draw on my experience at Walgreens, which is very associated to what we are trying to help our customers deliver here at Zebra as well. So one of the things that we knew at Walgreens that was not unique to Walgreens, it's very much prevalent within all of retail operations, is that there's a lot of work to be done in a very small amount of time. And because of that, there are a lot of things that either don't get done exactly as intended or don't get done at all. And we also knew that we had a tremendous amount of data that was coming from the edge, coming out of our store systems in both the form of inventory data and point of sale data. And so one of the things that we did as kind of a first step in our evolution of identifying and optimizing at the edge was to start to take that data and ingest it, acquire it into a platform that is called Prescriptive Analytics. And it's now currently, it's actually a Zebra product now called Zebra Prescriptive Analytics, where the platform was able to take the data and we could teach this platform how to identify patterns in that data that were indicative of desirable or undesirable behaviors that we would then be able to turn into alerts that would describe exactly what the issue was that we've identified, why this is an issue, so why you should really pay attention to it, the dollar value of that issue so that you understand the reason that we're even talking to you about this, and then give very prescriptive actions as to what you should do about that issue, all within a closed loop system that allowed our end users to be able to send back feedback to us, not only in the event that they had completed the task and they had resolved the issue, but also when we got it wrong so that we could continue to refine. And what we found from that was that we were able to augment what was already happening in our retail operation with a solution like a task management solution, which is where retailers can put the work they know they need to do, and then the store associates work through that queue. We were able to leverage this platform to help us find where the work that wasn't getting done was not happening, so that we could also then intercept and correct, so that we could capture the potential missed opportunity in the form of either missed sales opportunities, especially when you're talking about inventory management tasks. There's a lot of missed sales opportunity to be had if you don't have the product where it's supposed to be at the time that the customer comes to shop for it. But then we were also able to help identify areas where loss reduction was really more of the primary focus. And so it was really an exercise for us in taking the data that we knew we had tons of and leveraging it to bring new actionable insights into the operation, but not relying on tools that we had relied on candidly for many, many years. All of us had dashboards and KPIs. We were relying on something that allowed us to automate the review of the data and focus the time of our associates on action so that they could take the time they were using on dashboards and KPIs and dedicate more of that to either other tasks, right? There's never enough time in a retail operation, or more importantly, customer facing time that they can spend with the actual customers in our stores. And so that was the data portion. And then just briefly, and I'll pause there, the next step that we were taking is kind of to take it to the next phase of really leveraging IoT devices. And what that meant was for us to be able to automate the inventory visibility that we were gathering in the store at the present time, leveraging our associates through typical retail tasks. And that was to be done leveraging solutions such as computer vision, shelf edge cameras that are monitoring for the inventory constantly in real time, so that when products do go out of stock, we don't need to wait for a person to notice that. We could actually teach the system to look for those things and inform our other systems that had happened, so that we could create actions even faster. So we're seeing that in general at Zebra. The thing that we were solving for at Walgreens was not unique to us, of course, as I mentioned. Driving efficiency into the operation has become so important, and being able to automate some of those more traditional tasks has become critical, because the amount of time that is being spent helping with the complexity of the online fulfillment business has really created a drag on the profitability. And so the retail community today is really looking at the edge and looking at IoT solutions to be able to help them close that gap, so that they can reallocate the resources to this new volume of business that's coming in through their online business.
Excellent. Can you put any type of customer sat benefit on that? I know there's an internal business ROI, and that's of course important, but many times the customer doesn't see the fact that you're keeping more money, if I can be blunt about it. It's as important, but at the end of the day, can you comment on that if there is any?
Yeah, I can comment that I think the way that we were able to track that probably the most directly was through the measurement of the incremental sales productivity that was taking place in the operation. And so we associated that to customer satisfaction, just given that we always have to do everything pre-pandemic, post-pandemic now, right? So pre-pandemic, it was the customers were satisfied because when they came into the store, the products were actually on the shelf. Nothing's more annoying than the product not being there. Post-pandemic, what we're able to help with now is the inventory accuracy level is getting even better, so that when customers are placing orders online and using pickup options such as buy online, pickup in store, pickup at the curb, their orders are complete. And that is a pandemic, kind of created problem that certainly existed before, but not like it does today. And that customer experience has become so important to them, especially if they're making decisions not to come into the store because of concerns for their personal safety. So having that full order complete is certainly impactful to the customer satisfaction.
Well, as consumers, we want everything now, immediately. But beyond that, we're talking about that which is associated with health and the urgency and the importance of that as well. I agree. There is definite customer satisfaction in both those dimensions. Hey, thank you for sharing that. That is terrific. I think I'll move in the little time that we have left. A real world example in retail. Rob, give us a real world example, and I want you to talk about the connected worker, but give us the application of that connected worker.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best way to do that is to describe our journey at Refinery of the Future and Texmark and the work we've done there. And to set the foundation is Texmark is a family-owned business that competes in the petrochemical industry against all of the global household names.
So Texmark was your end customer, right? Your end user customer.
Is the end using customer, right? It's our
clarity
customer.
For the audience here.
Yep. And so what they were trying to do is they set out with two goals. One is, how do they compete against global companies with limited resources, do it in a safe and productive way? But secondly is under the umbrella of safety is, how do we make sure that we avoid insurance claims and the like? And so they set out on this journey to look at how technology and specific operational technologies could help them achieve that goal. And so the first thing that we had to do, and I'll take a page from Andy because she was very articulate and accurate in the process. And it's so great to hear that from an end user, that we had to get to repeatable use cases that were appropriate. And to do that is, if we look at kind of the umbrella is employee safety and security, we came up, and let's say that's the first and foremost. Then this consortium that built, because you can't do this alone, right? This is about a partnership, and it's about an ecosystem that will develop it with and including the customer. So we leverage what we call a quick start, and that is to have employees at all levels, field worker, mid-level, supervisor, managerial, and of course executives for sponsorship and budget and the like, to be able to come up with priorities. And so what ended up happening is the four use cases are, as Dr. Tom suggests, connected worker, right? We need to make sure that we have safe but efficient in improving production in our human capital, asset integrity and monitoring, condition monitoring of equipment assets, and video as a sensor. And so those four not only became the foundation of Refinery of the Future, but they became repetitive, not just to petrochemical and oil and gas, but what we're finding, and Bill, I absolutely agree, you kind of have to have the commentary around pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, is that we are now seeing connected worker is the use case that now transcends all industry verticals. There is not an industry vertical that's not looking for human capital production and performance increase, safety and security in the process to do that. So you got to leverage.
Rob, if I just may underscore that, I just wanted to underscore that this statement I made earlier about commonality, and you as a supplier want to be able to leverage commonality for obvious cost reasons, but also for experience reasons, right? And quality reasons. You want to be able to replicate. And we're seeing that across the industry. Not everything is, of course, the same in every solution. There's lots of customization. But the reason I want to point this out is the more we as an industry can hold on to those core repeatable things, the faster we'll advance the industry, the more confidence end users will get, because they're not the first ones using it, right? They're not the experiment. I think you would
Right.
agree. So please go ahead,
Yeah,
continue.
and to Andy's point, and I love this word about reimagine, is that we used to call that the art of the possible, and then it kind of grew into this art of the probable, art of reality, and it really today becomes the art of the impossible. So when you're sitting in this ideation session and you start throwing around ideas, we had a customer who said, our single most priority is we would like our engineers, our field engineers, to have X-ray vision. Can you guys do that, right? What do you mean X-ray vision? Well, they wanted to see through walls. They want to see through the ground. They want to see through earth before they're digging and doing those kinds of things. And in fact, when you think about that frontier technology, these things exist. But typically to any individual company, regardless of industry, it's not something that's mainstream in terms of operating their business today. So they have to trust the partner, the community, to go out and create these solutions that in fact allow them to do that. And so in production, right, we have Refinery of the Future that's doing those things. Connected worker through remote mentoring and education has absolutely exploded across all industry verticals. Right? There isn't now a conversation that we have. And oh, by the way, so much more open are these clients, customers, potential customers to having these conversations. But you have to get out of this not invented here disease, right? We call on global and large enterprise accounts. And the first thing they tell us is, yeah, we got that, right? We understand how to do that. Yeah, we understand IoT and AI and all that stuff. Until you really start to dig under the surface, when they give you an opportunity to ask a couple of, and it's just a couple of really key questions, they kind of realize, yeah, we don't really have this. In particular, if you want to be agile and deliver in a quick and efficient way, right? They'll take forever, right? And they'll try to ideate by themselves. And project, we'll call somebody, 6 months later, a year later, and they still haven't started the project, right? Or a project. But connected worker is absolutely at the forefront. It is the Trojan horse, and it is a fun dialogue for companies to have to just challenge themselves, right? How would you, if you had the opportunity, how would you reinvent the way that your workers deliver their work product? And it is through wearables, connected worker, and these ideation sessions.
Yeah, beautiful. That's so real, and that's what I just want to keep underscoring. You have a real world deployment. Bill talked about Walgreens, meaning a retail. You talked about a refinery, a petroleum refinery. I talked about with Andy, of course, the utilities industry, and that's what's happening here. And this is the reason for the IoT community is to help promote and advance the industry and to make the end user, the demand side, successful, as well as obviously the supply side. If they're not both successful, the industry doesn't grow. We all want that because we want better business outcomes as well as societal outcomes and helping people as well. So I think we're going to move on now to our friend Peter. Peter, please, what have you got for us? We're anxious to hear your insights and wisdom.
Also, I'm very lucky to work in a company who obviously focuses on the analytics side of things. So because of that, there is a whole host of potential things I could cover here. But I think to give you something a little different from what we've covered so far, I thought I would pick out in particular fleet management and an asset performance project that we've worked on with Volvo since about 2018 as a company. And they really challenged us to help them figure out how they could enhance the asset performance analytics they were already looking to do to ensure that when they decide to create a case of a fault within one of the trucks in their fleet, that really is valuable to do so, right? And they can analyze that data in stream as the data is coming off the vehicle or as the data is being collected from the vehicle. So extending it really from a position where in traditional analytics, you might collect everything first, build some modeling, and then run those in batch on a periodic basis as you collect more and more data. And instead, take those analytics that you've built and rules and other things that you've put in place and persist them in memory somewhere along that streaming data chain from the actual vehicle all the way through to the telematics collection hub. And in fact, that's what we did. And so since about 2018, They've been utilizing some, our asset performance analytics within the AIoT, which is something that Gavin, I think, is going to talk a little bit more about later on today, as the key backbone for building their analytics and putting in place the rules so that they can start to see over time as the fleet grows and as they add more devices to the vehicles to collect the telematics data, that they can start to improve the efficiency with which they create those cases, and then take those models and the rules that they've put in place and persist them in memory so that actually the data flows straight through them. So over that sort of 3 or 4 year period since
Peter, two things.
I
hope you all don't, you forgive me.
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize things, not necessarily interrupt for the benefit of the audience. Number one is the fleet management. Can you tell us the industry in which it was?
Yeah, so it's transportation of cargo. It's Volvo trucks and Mack trucks in the United States, and
it's okay to keep the customer name anonymous if you're committed to that.
I think it's publicly open on the web, that use case. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. And that's why the reason I'm saying that is that makes it real. If we can use real customer names that have allowed us to use them, obviously first. And okay, so number one, so I'm gonna let you finish, but the second context is you mentioned persistent memory. That's a technical thing happening, and not everyone in the audience may know how important that is. That is basically where the information doesn't disappear. And that's a hard problem because there's 2 ways it can disappear. The source of the information disappears, so you don't get any more data, right? When you're trying to talk to somebody and they shut up and they don't talk, or you forget what they said. That's another way for the data to be lost, right, as well. So when you capture the data, it's important for it to be persistent in the memory, in its usage, in its transition is the word I'm looking for, and its transmission, as well. So I just want to underscore that the SaaS company excels in that, that area of ensuring that is one way of preservation and protection of data to keep it persistent so that as soon as it's needed, it is there. You're not going to run out of milk when you want your cereal in the morning. That's the metaphor. Okay, keep going, Peter.
Hopefully not. But so no, absolutely. That is the purpose of the reason why I cover this opportunity, really, because of the fact that what we did was we put into a memory the models and the rules that they wanted to execute. And then as the telematics data started streaming in off the fleet, we start to execute, pass that data through that structure in memory. And yes, okay, it still gets put down to disk. And yes, you still do additional analytics on it over time. But anything that gets flagged as an immediate problem or something that needs to meet whatever criteria it is of the analytics that we've got in place gets passed straight through to the case creation system. And that allowed them to really, really optimize when they're bringing fleet vehicles in to be serviced, keeps the downtime minimal, right, for those vehicles, but also allows them to ensure that they optimize when they're doing the servicing. It might be that the error that comes off the vehicle is something that doesn't need to have the truck brought in for right away. It could be that it could be delayed until such point that you're going to do the regular service interval anyway. So these are the kinds of things that we were helping them with. And obviously, if there's really critical, dangerous situations occurring, those can be catered for as well in that scenario. So when they started, it was a fleet of something like 20,000 trucks where they experimented with it to begin with. And over the 4 years, it's now grown to in the region of 400,000 vehicles transmitting data continuously throughout the day from the telematics devices on board, through the platform that Volvo created, through our analytics persisted in memory, and into the platform for deeper analytics and longer term analytics. Now, the benefit of that is that over time, as there's more vehicles added, and as there's more incidents added and more knowledge is learned about the things that go wrong on those vehicles, the better the analytics gets, the more optimized your case creation becomes. And the actual end result of that is that now, right today, they've managed to reduce something we call as false positives by about 44%, which means they create 44% less cases from things that weren't correct in the first place. And their diagnostic time has been reduced by a massive amount, something like 70% on all those vehicles. And finally, the one that was really the most important to them, that really showed them the value, was the repair time being reduced for the vehicles by about 25% overall during that period. So that's an idea of a real in-production project where the IoT is making a huge difference, and asset performance monitoring is actually in a live situation bringing benefit.
Excellent benefit. And we do have a minute or two here left. How about the the return on investment. Can you at least qualitatively discuss that for your customer, if not quantitatively? Why was it good? Why did they like this?
Well, obviously, if you can reduce the repair time by 25%, that means that you've got more vehicles available all the time. And if you can reduce the diagnostic time by 70%, it really does mean that you can cut out a lot of decisioning processes that you might have had in the past, whether it was something you needed to bring in. So time delays reduced and decisioning processes reduced. And most importantly, the number of vehicles off the road at any time reduced significantly. So I'm afraid I don't know the actual value from the monetary perspective. We don't always get that, that kind of information, but you can imagine with that number of vehicles, that's a significant saving.
I can, and doing things faster is better in many things in life. Not everything in life, but in many things in life. So, and you can
it's almost about it's almost about making decisions earlier in the value chain, in the data's life cycle, right? And that's really the key to being able to compete better in the marketplace for companies like that, I think.
No, absolutely. That's terrific. It's great to, pardon me, hear that. And you mentioned a false positive that sometimes is called a type 1 error versus a type 2 error, right? And so what I love about the IoT, and when I was establishing the initial strategy for my company, Hewlett Packard, there was a big emphasis on being able to hit it right, not make a type 1 error, meaning miss things that you should, or a type 2 error, focusing on things you don't need to, right? Because they're not important, right? And be able to hit it right. And by taking more and more samples, which you're doing with the fleet, and more data, and analyzing it so wonderfully with your analytics, you can hone it in, you can hit it right, right? And we did this at a company that, again, distributes electricity called Duke Energy. They're the second largest in the United States. And the goal was how to optimize the budget, not have too much money at the end of a quarter or a year because you wanted to use it. And at the other end, of course, is not run out of money, as well. All those type of balances are just great in IoT. I'm going to have to sum up here by first thanking you, all of you. We had Walgreens retail, fleet management, with cargo and transportation, and of course, petroleum and chemical refineries. Here we had the utilities industry discussed. I hope the audience is satisfied that these are real world activities, and we've heard testimonies from Bill and his life 7 months ago, as well as Andy, on the end user side. I appreciate you all being here and listening to the keynote. I appreciate you all being here and listening to the breadth and the depth we have in our leaders community. If you're not a member of the IoT community, consider joining. Kevin, our host here, will get you the information you need, I'm sure. And I think you'll find it very, very valuable. So at this time, we're going to wrap up the first two sessions of our day, but don't go away because it gets better. I can't speak for you guys, but I was the worst speaker of the day. So therefore, it's going to get better. And I want you to just stay tuned and hear that. Okay, Kevin, turning it back over to you.
It's interesting. We have another 15 minutes here left on the slate, Doctor. So maybe we can put one more round of questions in for the rest of the time allocation.
Wow, this is an unusual error, right? It is a
type 1.
I just made a type 1 error. I thought we had a 30-minute time. Kevin is informing me we had 45 minutes. So I ought to pay attention more, right? I ought to apply myself more to this sort of thing. But that's a good idea. I mean, we all have stories we can tell, I'm sure. And if we need to, should we take some questions from the chat? Kevin, is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here in the chat if you want to bring them up in the chat box. So one of the questions here from one of the attendees is talking about standards and regulations to ensure IoT implementation in terms of safety of workplace and security of data. What is a pseudo standard for the world to follow? Security challenges around the IoT protocols is one. Do you charge a SaaS fee or just hardware and setup fees another? So maybe we want to address those couple of questions. And anyone else has questions, please type them in, folks.
Yeah, why don't I do it this way? Let me, Peter, ask you to comment on standards and regulations to the extent that you deal with that, and then also Bill.
Yes, of course. So once again, one of the benefits of being at a company like SaaS is that a very large proportion of our customers are already in the place where they have to adhere to very strong governance and lineage kind of regulations, mostly in the banking sector and insurance sector. But that means that our tools and our capabilities and our solutions that we've built over many years already provide a great deal of confidence for our customers and our partners in that space. One of the most important things, of course, with analytics today is ensuring that you can explain to somebody how a decision was made, what the process was that your analytics went through to decide what way it was going to treat a given scenario. And so all of those things have to be built in anyway within the analytics platforms that we have. But what I would say is that there are some quite interesting in this space, actually, because there's some new regulations that are being worked on by the EU right now that are going to be due out within the next 5 to 7 years, all about the application of artificial intelligence and people's ownership of their data and how all of those things get affected. So that's a new layer of governance that's going to be coming on top of the things that we've already been familiar with, such as GDPR and personal data and so on. And so these are all things that all software companies, whether they're offering software as a service or other kinds of capabilities, will have to cater for and build into their platforms to ensure that they meet all those requirements. And for us, as I say, it's very convenient that we have been doing that sort of thing in many areas for a long time. So it's something we take a great deal of care with in our builds and architectures.
And real quick, there was a related question for SaaS that I think the answer is very simple. There, you do offer a software as a service offering, which is a fee-based offering.
Yes, something that Gavin might be able to touch on a little bit more later as well. Yes, we're conveniently called SAS or SaaS, and
Sure.
we also offer software as a service capabilities with 2 A's. So yes, indeed we do. Yeah.
Not you, Peter, but what does SAS stand for? Anyone know?
Well, now that's a good question. But you mean SAS like this on my screen?
Your company on, yeah.
Okay.
I know.
So
Okay, that's homework assignment.
I believe it might have originally stood for something like software and statistics. I'm not entirely sure because since I've been in the company,
system. Statistical analysis.
Was it statistical analysis system? My apologies, I did not know that. It hasn't been referred to as that for a very long time.
I didn't mean to embarrass you.
I think I was quite young.
I thought, no, okay, that was a bad question. I should have run that by you first. All right. Okay, Bill, what does Zebra stand for? No, you go ahead, Bill. Comment on regulation and certifications and regulatory requirements to your knowledge, especially in your end user context at Walgreens.
Yeah, it's, my answer is pretty similar to Peter's actually. So because of the customers that we're interacting with, they are adhering to the standardized regulations such as PCI for payment information, HIPAA for healthcare information, and the pharmacy retailers. And so they have that standard already in their ecosystem, and we align right to those standards. And then I think I'd say incrementally to that, where we also then have a lot of experience working with our customers, is adhering to their standards within their security protocols as well. And you'll find those to be pretty specific to the retailer and specific to how they've developed those protocols. So it's not to say that they're not doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, but in some cases, they're also doing some more internally. And so we have a lot of experience being able to navigate that and adjust as necessary. But certainly as the baseline is concerned, those data standards and regulations are very much foundational to how we partner with our customers to make sure that all of the information that we're passing back and forth is being done so in the best, most secure possible way.
Okay, very good, very good. Anyone else have a question before we go on? I want to respect the time we have with the audience here. Anyone want to put something in the chat?
So one of the questions that's come in is, will cybersecurity topics be covered? Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot about cybersecurity, obviously, when security becomes a big issue, because not only are there more things connected, but there's more data being got from those things, and therefore the vulnerability is increased significantly. So absolutely.
There's another one for you. Can IoT affect data privacy in the long run? Integration of all data will be harmful. Is that a comment or a question, Pratish?
Yeah, that's good. Let me rephrase what I just said. The fact of the vulnerability of falls into the category of all security and of course privacy. How do we ensure the privacy of our employees, of our customers as well when it comes to the data? Anyone want to comment on that? What your companies are doing in that domain?
No, Dr. Tom, I think I'd offer this, that I think the comment is accurate in that as we create more data and we pass data back and forth between platforms, from the edge to somewhere centralized and back and forth, there certainly exists the opportunity for there to be risk. And so making that data integrity a priority, I think is really the commitment that, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues here on the panel, but I think that I would be pretty confident in saying that we all make that a priority, because at the end of the day, that's something that our customers are relying on us for. So we treat that data as our top priority, and the integrity and standardization of that security is something that we have to make a priority. It's our responsibility to our customers.
Yeah, I think
Mike,
Bill, you're exactly right, and you and Peter characterized it correctly in that, it depends on the industry vertical. Each and every has their own unique standards that we all adhere to. But around data and data integrity and cybersecurity, it's dynamic and evolving, right? So we all, and this is where the ecosystem helps one another, and most importantly helps the customer, is to stay sharp and to make sure that we are leveraging the most current technology and making sure we adhere to all those standards, even as it evolves, and the dynamic nature of it continues to keep us really sharp, right, to make sure that we're protecting our customers. And I find that in the ecosystem, this is where you really have collaboration and assistance.
The only thing I was going to add was just from a customer sort of personal perspective, the question there was about the danger of combining lots of data together. One of those things I've always thought about is it's about the individual's benefit, right? So, if I'm driving my car and I suddenly get an alert on the speaker that tells me I'm driving past Starbucks, do I want a coupon because of my car manufacturer has a relationship with them, I probably find that quite invasive, and I would not like that, right? But if I get a pop-up on my phone or in my car that tells me that, hey, actually looking at your heart rhythm at the moment, it looks like you might be about to have a heart attack, I'd kind of want to know that, right? So it's about risk reward. What's the benefit to the individual? What's the benefit to the people? And I think as long as we can get that sort of stuff worked out better over the next few years, people will all benefit more from artificial intelligence and IoT data being merged together.
That's an excellent point. And there's my company, as those of you know, is Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and we do a lot of infrastructure, not necessarily top of stack software like SaaS does. And we're looking at also not only the integrity and protection of the data and who owns the data, right? That's a good question, especially when a thing is producing data in your equipment or your software, who owns that data? But now we're facing who owns the control of the thing. So not only is there data compromised, now control is being compromised. People hacking into, remote controls and changing your television. Those may be harmless in one sense, but at the end of the day, hacking into the control of a grid or a particular vehicle eventually, right, on the road, are very dangerous. So one dimension of the security is authenticating the user and, effectively hitting it at the root cause. If the user is authenticated and trusted, and that's, of course, we get the zero trust notion for users and authenticating users as well. You're going to see a lot of this discussion today. So I do want to encourage you again to stick with it and stand by. Okay, we've got a couple more things coming in, and we just have a minute here. Let's see. We have people trying to answer the questions. That's good, because wouldn't you agree the four of us are among the least smart in the community? But that's good. We have, and unfortunately, we don't have time to get into that. But we do have just a few minutes left where I think we should say, without any more questions from the audience, if they're not coming up. One just came in. Let's take it. Let's take it here. Can malware destroy the entire IoT ecosystem? I don't want to compromise the questions. I want to read them as they come. Since data is being manipulated, yeah, malware can destroy a lot of things as well. I think that's, it's a qualitative question, of course. It can. But what Peter said, what Bill and what Rob said, and what I said is how we on the supply side are trying to fight this, and stop that, obviously, from happening with ethical use, ethical choices as well. Okay, with the last few minutes, it's the last word. Think about what you'd like to say to this community as you, leave this particular panel. can I give you first, Bill, the last word? Go ahead, and then each of the others.
Sure thing. You know, I think the thing that I like to repeat most often is what I learned in the way that we were leveraging IoT technology and capabilities is that it allows you to find two things that I consider to be kind of the two most predominant. One are the things that are happening all of the time in retail operation. It's activity, it's breakdowns, it's opportunities for improvement that happen constantly. Kind of a death by 1,000 cuts kind of a concept. And with IoT, we were able to harness that and be able to capture all of those things in such a way that it was very actionable to us. But it's also capable of being able to find the one-off situations that are being created by some other problem somewhere down the road or up the stack, perhaps inside the systems or processes of the business. And so I think the power of being able to think of IoT as being able to do both is something that has a tremendous amount of value, and I think a tremendous amount of potential as we continue to use our imaginations to think about how we can leverage it to find those things.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Rob, brief
Yeah,
last word.
I think the most important thing to the community is when you think about your own individual environment and company is don't be afraid to take the ideations that comes from inside your walls in your company and overthink things that these projects are all consuming, they're expensive and the like. It's just really the opposite. You have to take the first step. You have to include numerous individuals at different levels within the organization, and you'll find that the crawl, walk, run part of how this comes to be is very, very true. You become your own internal reference account, if you will, by starting with a project. And the A project it comes out of the prioritization through your think sessions, your ideation sessions, what we call a quick start. But we find that so many times our customers come back to us and say thank you for two things. One is getting us started and keeping us organized. And two is stopping ourselves from being our own worst enemy, right? When we have to say, guys, stop overthinking this. You guys have created your own priorities. Let's get started. You start small and away you run. But the deliverables are real. They're in production, and you're only limited by your own imagination.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Rob. Good advice. Peter, your last word.
Just really along the data, right? So obviously IoT produces a vast amount of data from all different areas of devices you can possibly imagine. The data itself, though, is pretty useless if you don't do any analytics on it. And in the same respect, if you flip that over the other way around, analytics itself is pretty useless if you don't have the right kind of data and the data of the right quality to work with. So it's just a really important relationship, the synergy between the two. I don't really see much of a future for one without the other. So for me, artificial intelligence and IoT have a unique bond, which really do mean that we can get the best out of that data at the timely manner when we need it to achieve the kind of value we want. And that's one of the things that SaaS is very focused on. And I'm looking forward to the future. It's a very exciting time to be part of IoT and analytics.
Thank you, Peter. I've already made my closing remarks at the false close 15 minutes ago, so I won't repeat them. But I will respect the audience question that just came in by pointing them to Aruba ClearPass, because the question had to do with how do we support in a secure way the onboarding of devices. And a device can onboard without a person, or a person could be, behind that with a smartphone or an iPad, a laptop as well. So I point you, I think you get some answers. At Aruba is the brand and ClearPass is the product. And with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Kevin, and thank you again for listening in on this Community Leaders panel.